Happy to have you guys with us. We're doing it all here today, breaking everything down. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Please, only takes a second. Helps us greatly. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening after the fact, leave a comment down below. We try and read and respond to all of them. And if you're listening in podcast, apologize. You had to hear that intro with zero context, having no idea what was going on. Very strange. But hey, leave a rating and a review. Subscribe to the podcast and tell your friends about the strategy show. Tell your friends about the channel. You know what they say? Word of mouth is the best form of advertising, Matt.
It sure is. I mean, what better ad than a friend saying it's good for you? And honestly, we're putting in time over here on the Stokastic DFS channel. So I think you're going to like what you see.
No question, man. Let's start with Saturday. We got 3 games. This is fun because I love 3-game football slates more than anything. Them and Monday night doubleheaders are my 2 favorite things in football. I just love it. Like Christmas basketball, sure. But a 3-game Saturday slate, pretty special. The games, on the other hand, not as special. We'll start it off with Minnesota at home against Indiana. I'll tell you, or Indianapolis. The books are begging you to take the Vikings here. The +4 says a lot to me. When a line seems too good to be true, it usually is. I think this game stays competitive. And if you're looking at the running backs on this slate, there aren't a lot of just smash spot running backs on a 3-gamer. It's hard not to like Jonathan Taylor against the Minnesota. Do you know the Minnesota defense? What are they, 10-3? Are they 10-3, I think?
I believe so, yep.
10-3. Their defense has allowed more yards per game than any team in the league.
I don't think that defense is even average. I think they're well below average. But when you run this hot from a randomness and a luck perspective, and yes, I said it, Minnesota fans, you're running hot. You're already in the playoffs, and now anything can happen. Ultimately, I look at this team and I say you got offensive playmakers, and we saw it with the way Justin Jefferson can play. There's shootout potential every single time this Minnesota Vikings team steps on the field, and I mean them and the other team. Jonathan Taylor has the highest expected fantasy points and opportunity value of any running back on the slate, this 3-gamer, as you would expect, but it's still just 16 expected fantasy points, right? At that price, at 7,200, we still need like 22, 25 points to feel really good about him in a tournament. And look, his ownership is creeping up towards 50% because, as you said, there are so few sure things at the running back position. I think this is a player that in Taylor, you could probably just straight up fade in large field tournaments. And it's one of the easiest ways to get contrarian, especially when I think Jefferson on the other side is still the better ceiling play straight up.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. All right. Now I don't necessarily disagree. Like I was building a lot of lineups, and a lot of them I just wasn't getting to Taylor because it can be kind of difficult. The problem I have with Jefferson, and I like Jefferson a lot. I mean, a lot, but it's going to be very difficult to play Jefferson and Diggs in the same lineup. Not saying you can't do it. Like if you wanted to go, I don't know, Dobbins and James Cook or so, you can make it work, which means that, naturally you'd be fading Chubb, Taylor, and Dalvin, almost certainly Dalvin Cook as well. We'll see. But man, Stephon Diggs, I think, and I'm not trying to bounce around too much here, but I think Stephon Diggs is underpriced in this spot.
He's a great value.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll get there. But that's what makes this 3-game slate really fun. It's like normally you can go, oh yeah, I play both of them. There's plenty of value, or just do that. On a 3-game slate, you got to be a little bit more calculated. And as you talked about Jonathan Taylor there, maybe getting away from him a bit, I think one thing I'm looking to do is not pay, I'm not calling it a premium, but not pay the premium in context of all of the wide receivers and pass catchers in Indy for Michael Pittman, but just go down to like a sub 4K Alec Pierce, maybe some Paris Campbell. I mean, Pittman's still the best player on this team from a pass catching standpoint, but the offense is so unpredictable. It's so erratic. It's oftentimes terrible. And the target share recently has been spread around enough for me to go, maybe I'll just save 2,000 so I can get to an actual good player on an actual good offense.
I think that kind of makes sense. So we should say that all of these top tier Colts skill players have projections ahead of salary based expectations, including Taylor at his RB2 7,200 salary. Pittman looks okay from a value perspective, but as you said, the erratic nature, the way that this offense continues to shift, and honestly, the way that Jeff Saturday continues to get his feet under him as a coach. Please don't say Jeff Saturday on a Saturday. Don't say it. Don't say it.
And Pierce is half the ownership right now of Pittman too.
That is kind of what I'm getting at. Campbell or Pierce have pretty decent chances compared to Michael Pittman of hitting their ceiling potential. And you're talking about players in Pierce or Campbell who, if you got a dozen points, if you got 13 points from them, you'd feel fantastic about them at their given salaries. Look, the expected fantasy points are 6 and 7 respectively. So they have to catch a touchdown and they have to be efficient. But I kind of get it. If you want to go off the beaten path against a bad defense in Minnesota, I kind of see where you're going.
I'm not excited about it, but I would rather be able to get to some higher priced options, right? Because there are, while it's only a 3-game slate, you still have Jefferson, you still have Josh Allen, who is far and away the best quarterback option on this slate. Like, we could talk about salary and everything and how it could, but just as far as like the best quarterback, it's clear against Miami. A few top tier running backs, several top tier receivers. You're going to have to make some concessions somewhere. That might be a spot for me to do it. I might even dabble with some Jelani Woods at 2,700 at the tight end position. Do you think we're at a point now where, I mean, Dalvin Cook 6,900. They've naturally priced him down in a 3-game slate. You can't, you have to price some guys out, and the wide receivers aren't at all. Does Dalvin Cook, among Chubb, Taylor, and him, rank first, second, third? Where is he falling for you among those top tier backs?
If I've had to rank them, I'd probably go Taylor, Cook, Chubb. If you just factor in all the risk factors, the defensive matchups, and the opportunity value, that's the order. But Cook is in a fine spot, honestly. 36% projected ownership for Cook right now. That's still less than Taylor. So if you're going to pick one of these running backs from a pure game theory standpoint, you could go with Cook, and you could say, to a detriment to Dalvin Cook this year would be that he hasn't gotten the same opportunity value, that same elite level opportunity that we've seen in the past from him. But still, on this 3-gamer with so few elite options, he's still number 2 among running backs in expected fantasy points per game. And the Colts are much easier against the running back position than the wide receiver, I will say, though I like just Justin Jefferson straight up. Dalvin Cook, the adjusted fantasy points allowed for the Colts this year, 22nd among 32 teams. It's a pretty good matchup.
I agree. I like Cook a lot. 6,900, easy to get to. The volume hasn't been as crazy, but he's still involved in the passing game. You could see 20 touches here for sure. I like Dalvin Cook. We already talked about, Jefferson is a great play. If you're spending a premium, then, I mean, the guy just went the length of the football field 2.25 times without scoring and still had 36 fantasy. I mean,
and he should have had that touchdown. That should have been a touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, it should have been a 43 fantasy point game.
Yep.
But outside of Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen, who, look, Ben put it like this on Saturday, among Adam Thielen, and if you look at these other receivers in a similar tier, like Adam Thielen, DPJ, Gabe Davis, all of those guys in that same trio of 5K players around there. Gabe Davis has the highest ceiling. He has the potential to just go insane. He also probably has the lowest floor. Thielen's probably the most stable in that sense with the lower ceiling. But at the same time, Thielen's had some rough games recently too. So I don't even know if I can say that. Do you like him or TJ Hawkinson or KJ Osborne in the passing game?
I think I like Hawkinson better. Okay. I do. Both of them are at double-digit expected fantasy points over the last 6 weeks, if you're just looking at the opportunity value. But TJ Hawkinson's gotten more, and the usage has continued to rise. And now the salary, it keeps flip-flopping. After last week, Adam Thielen is now at 5,200, where Hawkinson is at 5K. Last week, it was flipped, where Hawkinson was a little bit more expensive. So I don't want to play actually, I was going to say don't play a bunch of receivers from Kirk Cousins' offense, but I actually think with this 3-game slate, we need to talk about the fact that there's a chance with that weather going on in the Buffalo game that this is the only game environment that you want to surround yourself with. So even though the opportunity metrics look so-so and the matchup looks okay, if this is the only game that scores more than 45 or so points, then we're going to want all these tertiary options we can get. And in that case, Thielen, Hawkinson, Osborne, absolutely on my radar. Are in the largest field tournaments, players like Madison. You mentioned Jelani Woods. I think these become very relevant when this might be the only game environment you need to surround yourself with players with.
I think that'll probably drive me to more Buffalo, honestly.
I think that's a clear way to play it. If people gravitate to this game the way I'm talking about, then just say, all right, well, I'm going the other way. We saw it with last week where Tennessee Jacksonville was kind of middle of the pack in terms of game environment expectations. All of a sudden, our boy Chig goes off. There's other, Lawrence goes off, Engram goes off, and suddenly that's the game you need to build around.
Yeah, for sure. It's saying like at night it's supposed to be 11-mile-per-hour winds in Buffalo. That's not too bad. Or in Orchard Park. We'll see. I think it affects Tua a lot more than it affects Josh Allen. I can tell you that much.
That's what our tools say too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kirk Cousins. Let me ask you this real quick. And we're going to, obviously we'll speed this up a little bit. With a 3-game slate though, you have to break more down. Like you have to get more granular than you would. And we'll move to the Sunday slate after we get through these 3. Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. This does have a 48-point total. Indy does have a 22-point implied total here. So this isn't to say that this game is just, like, low scoring. Don't expect Indy to put up any points. Do you have any interest in Ryan or in Kirk Cousins as like maybe you're not as high on Josh Allen because of the weather than I am? Or I
think Josh Allen could do just fine, even if he's unable to pass the ball because of his nearly reckless running style of late.
And let's be clear, this is not Patriots Bills last year where the wind was like 400 miles per hour.
Correct. But we can also talk about that Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins from a projection standpoint have a really good projection compared to their salary-based expectations. Matt Ryan at 5,200, that's really cheap access to this solid game environment if you're thinking that this is the shootout of the 3-gamer. And of course, if you're going to play players like Jefferson or Hawkinson, or certainly 2 of them, I'm almost certainly stacking them up with Cousins as well, who's actually the 2nd highest projected QB on this 3-game slate.
Baltimore and Cleveland. Looks like Huntley's good to go. I don't see any reason to believe he won't be playing full practice coming off that concussion, apparently a mild one. I'm not enthusiastic about any of these pass catchers, but I like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards this week as values. I like Dobbins a bit more. I think both of them are viable against one of the worst run defenses in football.
They are. Maybe I'm like not a good watch the film guy, but didn't J.K. Dobbins look weird on some of those runs? Like stiff?
Yeah, but he averaged 8 yards per attempt. So.
All right. I should probably just let that.
I know. No, like it did look, but maybe, I don't know. If you look stiff and you still rip off 120 on 15 carries, I'm going, all right, maybe he'll be better next week and give me 150.
With a backup quarterback, and it's obvious that J.K. Dobbins is incredible from a vision standpoint because he was finding holes all over the place that we just have not seen Ravens running backs take advantage of that much this year. Yeah, Cleveland is 27th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and if Dobbins is going to command a workload like he did, it's going to look really, really good. But the bottom line is, if you look at fantasy points over expectation, what did he do compared to the value of his opportunity? Dobbins scored 9 points above his expected fantasy points. So we're almost certainly going to have to see that converge. He's going to have to get more work, or we're going to see less production. I think you got to say that Mark Andrews is very, very risky at this point, and the passing game is going to be tougher. Cleveland is actually 8th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing receiving cores. I get why you're gravitating towards the running back position.
Well, if you look at this, if you zoom out, excuse me, on this slate, it becomes a lot clearer why I'm interested, right? Because it's probably going to be Raheem Mostert against, with Jeff. I don't think Jeff Wilson's going to play. So that opens that up. Sure. I get that, but they are not a good running team. And it's also possible that they could be in a position where they have to abandon the run. I think Mostert will be fine, but I like Dobbins a little bit more. I think Edwards is fine. And I expect him. Let me see what the ownership looks like on him. Dobbins is at 21. That's not that high. 21%.
Running back 4.
Gus Edwards. Yeah. Gus Edwards at 10%. Yeah. I have Cleveland's run defense is putrid, much worse than that Pittsburgh run defense, even though they've sprung some leaks lately. But you look at it, it's like, okay, Devin Singletary, who is now in essentially a unpredictable backfield split with James Cook. Mostert, there's not a lot of value at the position here at all. So I think it kind of naturally funnels you to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, at least me. So I don't really want to do much with the passing game. And then in Cleveland, we'll pay attention to Amari if he ends up practicing and he's good to go. But God, dude, Deshaun Watson looked horrible again last week.
Yeah, something ain't right now. And it's also draining the value from Nick Chubb, who's still pretty darn expensive on this slate, 7,400. I'm just looking at it, and outside of J.K. Dobbins, looking at the skill position players, we have so few players ahead of salary-based expectations in this game. You're taking a huge swing by saying this game shoots out, or one of these stacks, Cleveland or Baltimore in the passing game, are going to be super valuable. Right now, they are 5th and 6th in our top stack rating and our top stack probability. Kareem Hunt looks like a value. That's it, man. Like David Njoku is at salary-based expectation. David Bell, fine at 3,100, but that's really because all you need is like 8 or 9 points, one big Deshaun Watson play to make it work. But I think even 5,100 for DPJ is a little suspect.
I do too. I mean, are we convinced that he's just going to have like another double-digit target game? This is why, again, when we need to zoom out on such a small slate, I would rather have Gabe Davis. I understand the weather. I understand that Gabe Davis hasn't been good. I get it. He's also getting a bit more ownership, but looking at this slate, where is the blow up potential? What do you think the likelihood is that you need a Cleveland stack to get there on this slate? Again, it can happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not speaking I'm not trying to just be rigid about this, but it seems unlikely. And Baltimore's defense, for what it's worth, injured, banged up, sluggish early in the season, they've definitely buckled down. They're now top 10 in both run and pass defense DVOA.
They're straight up good now.
They're what we thought they would be going into the season.
Mm-hmm. I saw the same trend. Look, Donovan Peoples-Jones had 12 targets last week. If he has 12 targets again, he's going to be just fine at that salary. With a 3-game slate, a 37-point total is something we have to talk about. But in a main slate, this is something we'd have at the very, very bottom of the show that we talk about right in the 5 minutes before we leave. And so while there is some talent here, if you said I'm full fading the big players in this game, I don't think that's a bad idea either.
Me neither. Do you include Nick Chubb there?
I'm really disappointed. I think good DFS principles say this is a strong player whose stock is down, and now his ownership is kind of sagging 27% compared to the other top running backs. But look, since Watson came in, it's been atrocious. He's basically lost all his efficiency metrics that we're so used to seeing. Nick Chubb is at 0 fantasy points over expected per game over the last 6 weeks. We literally never see that. He's just at what you would expect, which is okay value.
Yeah. I have some tepid interest in Kareem Hunt, not because I feel good about it, just because I mentioned the running back position is really rough once you get down past these top options. And like Matt said, even Nick Chubb isn't really, he doesn't stand out as a great play on this slate either. You need touchdowns from him for sure. Oftentimes you need multiple touchdowns from Nick Chubb, and he's done it plenty of times. Don't get me wrong. It's a tough matchup, though. This run defense from Baltimore has definitely buckled down a lot. Kareem Hunt, you're going to get like 40% of snaps from him. Maybe he rips off a long catch and run or something, Matt. Maybe on one of his 7-8 touches or whatever it is, he gets there. But that's just like a Millie Maker play for me.
Yep. The bottom line is the Ravens are top 10 against the quarterback in adjusted fantasy points allowed, top 5 against the running back, and top 12 against the wide receiver and tight end position. A great defense. If no Cleveland DFS relevant players come out of this slate, don't be surprised.
Miami, Buffalo. All right, so we're wrapping up the Saturday slate here, and then we'll move on and segue over to Sunday with 10 games